Hello and welcome to Jockeys, the podcast. I'm Adam McNamara, and this is the racing podcast where we strip away the guarded versions of jockeys that you see every day on TV, giving them the platform to tell us what they really think. We talk about their regrets and aspirations, and we have a couple of laughs along the way as well.
In this episode, Callum Shepherd.
Yeah, it might be a bit eccentric, but I'm probably quite lazy as well. I'd gone over there without, as I often do, I'd book flights maybe the day before and do everything fairly last minute. I think it's the panic and the worry of what you're going to come back to, or more, what you're not going to come back to. You don't even have time to speak to some of your own friends and colleagues who are doing exactly the same thing. The bums and saddles segue was a very neat one on your part, so I congratulate you on that. That was very good. When my Sunday evenings were at risk, then I felt it was time to take a stand. Not had to bring the solicitor, put the solicitor on standby, so that was good.
Callum, welcome to Jockeys, the podcast. I've been itching to get you on for quite a while because, and I'm probably putting a little bit of undue, unfair pressure on you now because I'm teeing you up for failure. But I felt like this would be an entertaining episode, and I'm hoping it will be. Let's start, as I always do, with outsider racing because I've known you for quite a while. But I have to say, I don't really recall if there's anything that you do outside of racing, hobbies and sort of extracurricular activities. So can you give us a bit of an insight as to what you might get up to on a day off?
Yeah, I'd love to give you some real outlandish, extraordinary hobbies, but yeah, I don't really have any. I'm probably pretty similar to a lot of other people you've spoken to. I like watching the football, going out, having a drink, have a bit of lunch on the odd Sunday we do have off, and actually myself, George Wood, Hayley Turner, another friend of ours, went to Milan a couple of years ago. When the break came about, and went and watched the Champions League game there. That would be my idea of a good trip, and it was. Other than that, it's not an awful lot to say. No, so nothing groundbreaking, I'm afraid.
I think that's somewhat surprising to me, just because I feel like you're quite an eccentric kind of guy. And I had in my head that you'd have some like really shocking, surprising hobby that you do behind the scenes. But football is just fairly, it seems quite mainstream for a guy like you.
Quite mainstream, yeah. So we don't get an awful lot of time to sort of explore anything anything new, especially once the season comes about. I have been blessed with a bit of time off over the last few years, injury induced, and obviously that in itself limits you. And when I was off injured, I went to South Africa on safari and went to Cape Town, and I went to Miami and Florida this winter when I did this did similar. So I like to travel. Unfortunately, been able to travel plenty through this job, which is great, which is something I really value. But again, I try, anything on holiday. I did like paragliding, and I do anything whilst I was sort of away. But yeah, day to day, I don't find an awful lot of time. Yeah, it might be a bit eccentric, but I'm probably quite lazy as well. So yeah, the result of which is that I don't do an awful lot, if truth be told.
Tell me about Miami and Florida. That seems, I've never been to America, and it's something I really want to do, and I need to do more traveling. But Miami and Florida, the only bits I've seen of them are sort of from the movies and that sort of generic Americanized stuff that you see on TV. Is that what it's like when you actually get there, or did you find it to be quite different, or was it like everything that you'd expect?
Miami was quite sort of as you expect, I think. It's sort of influencer country, isn't it? I think, and but it had great fun there, and I went down to Florida Keys, which is right at the bottom end of the states, and by the southernmost island is the southernmost part is very close to Cuba, and that's like a different feel entirely. And I'd gone over there without, as I often do, I book flights maybe the day before and do everything fairly last minute. And I only decided to go down there once I was there. Decided I didn't fancy Disney World, so I went the other way, and that was an amazing place. I'd really recommend it to anyone. It's a sort of real island vibe sort of feel to it, and water sports, and yeah, that was great. And you say that's fortunately managed to turn, what's always an unpleasant sort of situation regards injury into so an opportunity to see a bit more of the world, which was good.
Let's talk about the injuries then, because it's something that fascinates me, watching how other jockeys have dealt with their injuries, because I had 2 injuries when I was riding and didn't deal with them at all well. The shoulder came out twice. The first time dealt with it horrifically poorly, mentally, I mean. And the second time came out again, and I maybe dealt with it slightly better, but I also knew that I was kind of coming to the end of my career, and so I found it really difficult as well. But tell me what that feeling is like, that initial feeling when you get an injury and you get that kind of, doctor tells you you're out for X amount of time. What that feels like. For me, it was a bit of shock. I was in denial, and it was gut wrenching and heartbreaking to realize how much you were going to miss and the opportunities you were going to miss. And my mind started spiraling. So what was it like for you? Did you manage to deal with it well? Was it really difficult? Tell me all about it.
Yeah, so it's horrible. Probably similar to you. I dealt with it better the second time. So the first one was like October 20, I want to say 22. And I broke my wrist, and I think it was 2 months. And yeah, like I'd actually had a pretty poor season that year, and it was sort of, I was finishing off kind of okay, and then that happened. And I think it's the panic and the worry of what you're going to come back to, or more what you're not going to come back to, really. And that's frightening. I think, the only saving grace was it wasn't in the summer, and it was lucky that, yeah, we got back, and actually I got back, and we had a really successful winter from like January onwards when I was back. So sort of it all worked out okay. But especially when it happens, it's like a horrid feeling. It is the panic of what you're going to miss. That is the first thought, and it's a cliche. Everyone would tell you the same, but it is unfortunately part and parcel of doing this.
This is something that's just popped in my head here now, and I'm going to go with it, because it might be a little bit of a controversial take, but I think it's an important one. So, as you said, like throughout this podcast, there's kind of a recurrent theme of I mentally would not be able to do this without, finding a balance, finding something outside of racing. Do you find like, is there something innately wrong with the way the system is structured to make it so that jockeys have to work so hard to find an appropriate balance, to have mental health support? Is there something wrong with the system?
In that regard, it probably boils down to the fixture list, which people have gone over so many time and time again. That is the fundamental problem, is that you are automatically work orientated for such a extensive time period and time frame, that if you then fill that 5% you do get, if you're then just thinking about racing and frying yourself about what's happened and this race and that race and not riding this horse and that horse, then like you're in such, like it would put you into turmoil, unless you're in going on an incredible run where everything's perfect. If it's not, and that's all you can dwell on, then you're in trouble, I think, mentally. So I think it's fundamental of the fixture list and the relentlessness of the calendar. Even like Hector Crouch, for instance, would be one of my best friends. I can't remember the last time I sat down and had a outside the way. I can't actually remember the last time I saw him at the races. But obviously, he must have been other fixtures. But like, I don't remember sitting down and having a chat with him recently. Like, that's how flat out it is. You don't even have time to speak to some of your own friends and colleagues who are doing exactly the same thing. Like, I couldn't drive home to you how, as you know, just how relentless the flat racing calendar is. It's unbelievable. I don't think it's going to change, and for the most part, you just have to buy into it. And when you do get that sort of relief from it, as I was spoken about, you've got to sort of switch off a little bit. And I always find now, even when I'm on the way home, try and get I rarely drive now to the races if I can help it, because I can get in the car and just switch off and put something on the iPad, whatever. And I think even that's so important. My working day finishes then, rather than 3 hours time when I get home. I think even that is like crucial. And all that's like, fortunate to be in a position where I can do that. But that's like time. And, I've been doing this quite a long time now. And you find what you need to do to put yourself in the best position in life, but also to ride horses.
I just find it like so sad. Like some of the stuff you said there about not being able to remember the last time you had a conversation with Hector. But there's also that underlying thing that every jockey says, that like, that's racing and I'm fortunate to be in the position I'm in. But I think it's sad that to feel fortunate to be in the position you're in to ride the horses you're riding, you're going to have to sacrifice so much. Even little things like having conversations with your best friend, it just feels fundamentally unfair, I guess.
Yeah, you're probably right. Like in the ideal world, there would just simply be less racing, and you'd have 2 days off. 2 days off a week would be great. But like, I do love what I do, and like, it's not just a throwaway comment that I've lucky to be in the position I'm in, etc. I am, and I've got access to some wonderful horses, and I personally now ride for some great people, and people that I have a great relationship with. So that makes everything less taxing, in terms of like, that does make things less taxing work-wise. That isn't to say that it doesn't detract from it entirely by any means, but it does help. And like, that's just it's just that is racing. That's just what, it's no one's going into it blind. We know what to expect, and I make the same decisions in that, every time. I'd if you asked me, would I do it all over again? Of course I would. So
I
don't think anything's going to change. I don't think anything's going to change. So it's sort of, you just have to get on board with it and cope with it as best as you can.
I want to give this a bit more context. I don't want to bang on about this for too much longer, but I do think it is important to give it context. Say for the average viewer who maybe doesn't watch racing all that much, or doesn't understand the politics of racing, when we argue for an extended flat jockey break, generally the argument that comes back from some people in the industry is, well, they're self-employed, why don't they just take days off? Can you give us a sense as to why? Because I know it's not possible, having lived through it. But for the average person who maybe doesn't understand why you can't do that, can you explain to me why it isn't as simple as, I can just take a week off when I feel like it?
Essentially, if someone was to do it, would be like career suicide eventually. Like, it wouldn't initially be the odd day, like if Sunday or the other Sunday there was forthright and Pontefract, and George said, I don't know, I'm not sure he had a run in the end, but he said, you don't need to go. And I actually went and rode in the Czech Republic instead, which was actually a bit of fun. But so I was like, again, right people, right situation, you might get a bit of leeway. And but essentially it's a 7. You've got to be available to them 7 days a week, because if you're not, then you'll soon find yourself, you might want to work 6 days, and you'd soon be working maybe 2 or 3. Like, that would be the slide that that could happen. Like, it's just not an option to let people down. Not, yeah, so it's hard to put it inside. It's so hard to sort of put it inside.
Well, effectively, they'll just
neat,
find someone
succinct
else,
way.
won't they?
But essentially, it's not possible because if you're not available to people when they want or need you, then they will go elsewhere, and then all the work that you do put in is void, basically. You know, you're not going to, people aren't riding out 3-4 days a week, whatever. And that would be part of the reason they then are desperate for a day off one day, or a couple of days, whatever, or a week off somewhere. They don't do all of that to then basically void the work they have done to then pass the benefit over to someone else. And unfortunately, we are competitors at the end of the day, and there's going to be a bum in a saddle, and if it's not yours, it's going to be someone else's.
Talking about different bums and saddles, I want to get onto a fairly controversial topic, I think, within racing, generally speaking, but also in your own career specifically. I want to talk about the Ambiente Friendly situation, and I don't want to get into the nitty gritties and the politics of it or anything like that, because I think it's been done to death in some regards. But I want to talk specifically about that feeling of being jocked off, and in particular in that situation. Obviously, you won, I think it was the Lingfield Derby trial on Ambiente Friendly, and then were subsequently jocked off as he was going into the Derby. Now, if you'd have been beaten on him in the Derby trial, I'd have maybe said, fair enough, I can see them wanting to change. But when you've won on a horse, done nothing wrong, and you're leading into a big race like the Derby, tell me, because you represented yourself very, very well in all the interviews and so on afterwards, and you were very politically correct. But can you tell me what the genuine emotion was when you find out you've been jocked off for whatever reason? I want to know just how it felt.
The bums and saddles segue was a very neat one on your part, so I congratulate you on that. That was very good. It's an inevitable question as well. Like, I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken, yeah. Because I think it was basically fear at how it would make me feel if he won. But to be honest, that's what it was in its entirety. For instance, like this year, an ARC-winning jockey, Luke Morris, had his first ride in the Derby and on a 100 or something to one shot. Like, it's so hard to get a ride in a race, let alone a horse horse with such a chance. And horses kept sort of falling by the wayside in the run up to that race. And so like I was just devastated. It was just I was just kind of terrified as how I would kind of get over it if it happened. You know, I thought I could just imagine in 20 years' time there being replays of the Derby and the voiceover being, and this is the dark where Callum Shepherd got jocked off. I hated that was going to be the narrative for me, and I really feared that it would be. And if it had happened, it might have been. So yeah, that's all it was. And it wasn't even a case of, I was going to watch the race and you're going to swing off his tail, which is the phrase that jockeys use to one another. Like, I didn't watch the race because I just, also didn't want to just be that person in terms of sort of regards to, because there's some lovely people behind that horse. So it's just so, and that's just horrible. It's horrible to then not be, in with them on the big day. But yeah, it just boiled down to just fear at how it was going to make me feel. I don't know how I'd have got over it, quite frankly. It's not something you can sort of put right. You can't. No one could tell me, you ride another derbies, like, hopefully, but I likely. Let's be just realistic. Like, it might not happen that I would have had such a good ride in a derby ever again. Like, let's just I'm very ambitious that I will ride in derbies and hopefully win one day. But the probability would tell you that I'd be unlikely to go into the race with like a 5-2 shot, whatever he was. So that was obviously, that was tough, and I hope I dealt with it as respectfully as I could. I turned down every interview in relation to the horse before and after, and any time sort of any clips or was used was if I won a race and someone say would inevitably ask, and I would give an answer, but it was not something I ever sought out to talk about, and yeah, so I hope everyone involved felt that I was totally respectful to everyone, but yeah, it was tough.
I think the only kind of comparison I can draw from my own experience is when the horse I won the Eber on went to the Melbourne Cup, and I wouldn't say I was jocked off because it wasn't really my ride, but they didn't choose me to ride him in the Melbourne Cup. They picked How Herrera, which made sense because best jockey in the world. And I didn't watch the race either because same as you, I just thought if this wins, and I thought he would win. I thought if this wins, I'm not going to be able to live with it, and I wouldn't have had the same narrative around it as you did because nobody really cared that I got jocked off for the Melbourne Cup. But the swinging off the tails thing, I find very interesting because so for people who might not know, if you're sat in the weighing room and you've been jocked off one, inevitably you're all sat around watching the race, and jockeys go, "Oh, you're swinging off its tail," as to mean you're basically trying to pull it back because you don't want it to win.
Yeah.
But it isn't. Don't you find it? I think similar to you. I find it like it's conflicting emotions that you don't want it to win because you just be thinking for the rest of your life, what if I rode it? What if I won on it? But also because there's such wonderful people connected, and in my case, same. There's wonderful people connected with that horse that I wanted them to have the success, and I wanted the horse to win, and I wanted the horse to do well. Isn't it really difficult to kind of manage your own conflicting emotions in that scenario?
I'll be honest, when in the lead up, it was like, let's just be totally frank about it. In the lead up, my emotions, I wasn't conflicted in what I wanted the result to be. Let's be honest, I wasn't, and I didn't watch it. And it's by the same token, I wish no ill will on anyone involved. But yeah, it wasn't going to be a palatable watch for me, so I just didn't. And yeah, that's about it. That's that. Probably, yeah.
Let's talk about then the positives kind of subsequently, and I think it was maybe helpful in your case that it was controversial, particularly on social media, the decision, and the general sense of opinion seemed to sway in your favor. Which, and again, I'm obviously biased, but I would have been in your corner at the time as well. But then to kind of subsequently go to Royal Ascot, Isle of Jura and the Hardwick, I think it was kind of plain for everyone to see after the difficulties that you've been through with Ambiente Friendly and elsewhere to get to Ascot and to have that moment. Did that feel a little bit like, I don't know if redemption is the right word, but did it feel like it made it okay and you were able to put it behind you? Because I think your interview afterwards was quite raw and emotional, which I loved, and I think everyone else loved it. Did it give you a bit of, I don't know, gratification or something?
Well, yeah, the sort of intricacies of the emotion wasn't really apparent to me. It was just joy, and obviously everything that preceded it was relevant to it, obviously. And as I say, that if there was a narrative about my season, and there probably was at the time, it would have been that still. It felt like it certainly changed it for me, and I just felt like that was, I could just move on. I could move on then, and it was, yeah. But it must be said, because of what preceded it, it did just add to the joy of it all, and obviously, yeah, the emotion that you saw, unfortunately. But that was like just magic. I mean, I just can't describe to you how special a moment it was. And yeah, nearly grateful because of everything that went into it. It just made it all so much more so. First winner for George at the meeting as well, and it was, yeah, it was amazing. And it was actually that in itself would have been like, you've had a great season on that basis. But then we went and won a load more races, load more good races through the end of the season, and then through this winter as well. German St Ledger, and we won the Champagne with Bay City Roller. We'd won the Palace House with with 7 questions, to name a few, and West Acre, and ended up great in Dubai, Phantom Flight. Like, I think that was the thing. I had such a great vehicle to just get on with it and move on and write. And to say, the access that I had to those sort of horses just meant that I could, felt I could really move on from it. And so literally from that point onwards, it was done and moved. Everyone was just moved on. And let's say I just so lucky to have had that moment and have had the horses subsequent to him.
Let's talk a little bit more specifically about your riding. And I don't want to dwell on specifics of riding too much, but I do think it's somewhat important. I feel like, so I obviously knew you when we were apprentices up north, like 2015, 2016, I think 2017, you were still there. You might have moved south at the time, but I remember a comment you made at me at the time that I found really offensive. Was I think I'd ridden more winners than you at that point in the season.
Oh, you definitely had, yeah.
You'd said to me something. We were in the weighing room. I think I'd ridden a winner, and we were watching the replay. And you said something along the lines of, "God, you're very strong, but you're not very stylish." And I found it really offensive. But then subsequently, I've thought about it since, and I thought, well, obviously maybe your emphasis was on style, and I think anybody watching you would argue you're quite a stylish rider. And for me, there's little hints of a Jamie Spencer-esque type of riding style around you at times, and you've been known to drop one out and be patient and come late. Is that something that you work on, like your style and how you ride? And is there a way that you think you ride better, whether it's holding up or from the front, or is there something that you think, yeah, this is kind of my niche and this is what I'm really good at?
Yeah, well, first of all, sorry about that comment. I've always been prone to, cool, say it as I see it, I suppose. No, I think what you say is like the Jamie Spencer thing obviously kind of does make a bit of sense. It's sort of just, I think it's like an approach. It's like an approach to it. And I, it's never something I particularly try to manufacture. I think it's, because I think if you're always trying to manufacture yourself as a rider, like it just kind of, I think maybe it would nearly get in the way. I think, especially when you're younger, you can probably do it a bit more. But obviously, you've got to become your own rider. But we sort of, probably have a sort of a little bit similar approach in that I just want to get horses to relax basically, and I want the best part of the race to be the last bit. And like when I was an apprentice, if I ever hit the front and got beat, that would kill me. So I just sort of decided, well, I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to be the last to challenge. And that's, I think that's, again, it's your own experience and whatever. And I must admit, I'm big fan of the way Jamie rides, among many others. And it does, that probably becomes a bit of a sort of ethos into how you do things. David Simcock, then, I've ridden regularly for a number of years now. Obviously, he loves his horses. He loves Jamie and loves his horses ridden. You don't have to be last by any means, but just in a way that they're relaxed and they're doing their best work at the end. And also, I think that normally that approach gets sustained improvement from a horse and gives them some longevity, which is like David, I think, would be that's his sort of key things. And it's a way of riding that just, I think it came naturally to me and suited him. And ultimately it probably has become a little bit of a niche. I think there's some outstanding riders all over the world, particularly in this country. Like the talent in the weighing room is remarkable. A lot of people a lot of instructions from trainers are similar. So if you get in the stalls, you look across and you eight out of the 11 might have been told to sit handy. So a lot of the time people are aiming to do the same thing, and maybe set out to ride in the same way, obviously then draw and everything else comes into it. But I think if I've got a niche that maybe I could set me slightly aside is having that approach, I think, and just kind of and riding with that sort of ethos that getting them to settle, sort of be willing to take your time, and to a certain extent be willing to maybe be a bit unlucky and get shot at. But perhaps, but the reward is often worth the risk, and horse by horse basis. But I think that's a long-winded way of saying, and I think what you're saying is fair. It's a way it's a way of riding that has obviously worked for the people I was riding for, and they like it. So and I think the more people buy into sort of that approach, it just becomes a way of doing things that seems to work well for me, and sort of who I ride for in the main.
Let's move slightly away from racing specifics for a little minute. I want to talk to you about social media. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it'd be fair to say there have been times where you've been outspoken on social media, Twitter, on certain subjects. I think generally speaking, I feel like that's a really difficult thing for a jockey to do, because you're just kind of opening yourself up to be in the firing lines, because specifically around kind of political racing issues, if you raise certain opinions, you can be shot down very, very quickly. Is that something that you've done less of as you've sort of gotten older? Is this something that you maybe look back on and think, I wish I hadn't expressed my opinion so much? Or do you feel like, no, you know what, if I've got an opinion, I'm going to put it out there regardless?
Yeah, so like before, I think I think what you sort of would be referencing was like, I'd be quite reactionary maybe to certain like bits of abuse or whatever, like that we all get. And I say don't really care. I don't think it ever affected me too much, but certainly nowadays I really don't care. But in regards to like for instance, that Sunday evening racing a few years ago, like I would I kind of had a bit to say about that, and fortunately we sort of stood together and managed to get that sort of chucked out. And there's been other issues, whatever, which to be honest, it's never bothered me. Like saying what I think, it's not, and I say probably similar like in interviews. Like I'm probably less guarded than most. Like it doesn't really bother me. Like if so, I don't think anything I'm saying is ever particularly controversial, or it certainly wouldn't, be offensive to anyone. But it doesn't. It's never really bothered me sort of saying what I think in certain situations, and not often. Often you don't need to say anything. Like I say, I'm not like a massive social media user. I've never had anyone like do. She sort of spoke to Sam, and like so many jockeys will have like Instagram people do it now, and maybe I'm missing a trick, and I don't have a sponsor. Maybe there's a reason for that. It's not really me. Sort of not very flamboyant in that sort of way, but like occasionally there's an issue or something, there's a reference, like, and I'd be happy to speak up on sort of our behalf when I feel it's necessary.
It's something that I think is changing like across sport. I think athletes in general are maybe speaking up a little bit more, but I think jockeys are still behind in that regard. But do you feel like it's something that jockeys, generally speaking, should do more, as if there is an issue, be a bit more outspoken? Because I think there's like I've talked about it many times, but kind of like a historical, like jockeys should just kind of do your job, be quiet, don't be raising issues, and just kind of get on with it and be thankful, and like thankful for the opportunities and that kind of narrative. But do you think it's something that jockeys should be a bit more brave about, to speak out if there are issues and say, hang on, actually, we're not happy with this and we shouldn't have to deal with this?
Yeah, it's like don't feel people, if they're not comfortable doing it, and they shouldn't, and that's fine. And equally, if they've got something worth expressing, then by all means, sort of thing. But so you'd never begrudge someone from just wanting to fly under the radar and just say, not, some people just don't feel that strongly about things. So, and that's fine. That's sort of fine too. Be pretty relaxed in the main, about things like that. But yeah, the odd time when it was when my Sunday evenings were at risk, then I felt it was time to take a stand.
I think that's fair enough. Last thing I want to touch on with you, and this is obviously a bit of a recurrent theme, but I wanted to ask you how your love life was. young, handsome man like yourself, I'd have thought you'd have, no troubles with love life. So can you fill in the viewers on how Callum Shepherd's love life is going?
No, firstly, that was a grey area for everyone else. Yeah, that's fine. No comment. What about you? Tell them about all your ex-girlfriends. It's a fascinating tale.
I
You
don't
might
have
need
many
your own
ex-girlfriends.
episode for that, but
I've had a very limited love life, I would say. I've been quite under the radar, as you said, and now I'm in a long-term relationship, quite happy. So
it's good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you tried to catch me out there, but it's not worked.
Yeah, no, I think it's something we all aspire to. So
yeah. Did you actually win the Czech Derby?
Yeah.
Well, I did. Well, here we go. Well, I completely missed that out. I obviously don't check the results in Czech Republic, so that's a big deal.
That was good. It was good fun. I should have had the night in Prague to enjoy it, but I was at Wolverhampton.
Yeah, Prague's meant to be a good night.
Perils of the fixture list, but no, it was good fun. Enjoyed it. Very good people, very kind people over there. Very hospitable. Be nice to make their acquaintance again. Good.
Right, Callum, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. I felt like it would be an entertaining episode, and I feel like it has been. I feel like we've had a really good, enjoyable conversation. And I really appreciate it. And obviously, wish you the best of luck for the rest of the season, and hopefully we'll see your name in the headlights more often than not.
Thanks, Adam. I hope it was good fun. I've not had to ring the solicitor, put the solicitor on standby, so that was good. That was good.
Thanks.